On this episode of AV Week, Diversified has acquired HB Communications, where art and AV come together, and looking at a few AV companies that have gone public with IPOs, the difference between working for a public versus private company in AV. All that and more. Next on AV Week.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AV Week, episode 520, recorded Friday, August 6th, 2021. AV Financials.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by
Sure, sound extraordinary.
And by Middle Atlantic. What great systems are built on.
This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week, first and foremost, Charmaine Torella from Varex. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Hello.
Also from the great state of New Jersey, Mr. Steve Greenblatt from Control Concepts. Welcome, sir.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. And last but not least, technically he lives in New York, but he works for Extron out in Anaheim Way. Mr. Derek Jonkas. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Extron is one of our fine sponsors, so we thank them for their support. First story actually comes to us from our friends over at AV Magazine. Enterprise video platform Kaltura, they have been listed on the NASDAQ, currently trading at about $12 a share. According to the filings, Kaltura's 2020 revenue was $120 million, year-over-year growth to date at about 46%. In addition to that filing, about a week and a half ago, Snap One, formerly of Snap AV, also launched their IPO. Snap has been on a purchasing spree, I would say, over the last couple of years. They picked up Control 4. Most recently, they picked up actually another AVNation sponsor, Access Networks. Charmaine, we're going to start with you on this. When you look at companies like this, you know, how does a public or private company, well, that's what these companies are doing. They're going public, so they've got a board of directors, they've got shareholders to account to. How does that impact either side of that, dealers, but also how does it impact users?
Well, it impacts dealers, frankly, because now it's demonstrating how the market is changing in terms of solution, right? Where these things are going to IPO. This is what the market is looking for. This is the value that the consumers are looking to get for their environment. So it's changing the way we think about in AV world what a solution should be. It's now going in the cloud. It's going soft. And here are the IPOs and the acquisitions to prove it. Everyone is making that strive because the market is thirsty for it, especially going post-pandemic. Everyone is trying to find better ways and more flexible ways to engage now. And this is exactly where we are. So that's how it's going to affect the market. Hopefully, it will affect the market and the integration side well enough to where we start factoring more of these types of solutions into our product set. That is the goal. That's what the end game should be.
All right. We are going to talk about a couple of mergers and acquisitions here in a minute. Any of the three of you can answer this. I don't believe there is a publicly traded integrator. Am I correct in that assessment, guys? Anybody know of any publicly traded? All right.
Nope.
Okay.
I think you're right. There's not one that I
historically
not
there
correct.
was.
Yes, yeah, there have been
Didn't go so
historically,
well.
and there are certainly a couple that are investment firms and investment banks that have purchased, and we'll get to that in a second. But I wanted to make sure before we go down this next road. Steve, I'll start with you. You'll have the next question on this. I've got a couple of stories that have been shared with me over the last couple of weeks because I've been kind of meandering around this topic. There are a couple of industry leaders who have said, you know what, I can do certain things as a private company that a public company would never let me do, right? Shareholders would go nuts. I mean, you're talking about, a company, let's say that is traditionally a video, processing, or a matrix company that goes into audio, an audio company that goes into control, and vice versa. As a publicly traded company, you've got to have certain returns on the investment. You have to have certain growth. Sometimes that's through, raising revenue and increasing sales, but also that growth a lot of times comes from mergers and acquisitions. When you look at this, what are the benefits from your standpoint, as somebody who services some of these companies but also works with their product, of being a publicly traded company, or what are some of the drawbacks of it?
A publicly traded company that has a lot more resources at their disposal financially. So that is one thing where they have the opportunity to ramp up for the growth that Charmaine was talking about, how, that this may be a technology that's really taking off, and they have the ability to scale up a lot easier because they have more access to capital and also likely just knowledge and capabilities, and they can tap into a lot more of a talent pool, likely because they have a board of directors, because they're built to scale, versus a smaller private company. They may be comfortable where they are. They may be looking to scale a lot slower. They may they don't have other people to answer to. As you mentioned, stockholders want a return on their investment, as do the people that are put in the high ranking roles. They're incentivized based on the growth of the company, the profitability of the company. So the benefit is that this gives a company a lot more capacity, let's say. It also gives a lot more visibility to our industry and to the things that we do. As Charmaine mentioned, this likely puts AV on the map a little bit more than it has been in the past, for where it was always considered more of that mom and pop type of business and a very niche industry. But on the con side, you have a lot of people to answer to, and for somebody who's used to running a business a certain way and doing what they want to do and being creative, they probably have a lot more restrictions and things to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. Derek, we'll let you end up on this one. We talked about a second ago, the different types of financing in AV. Certainly, going public, especially for manufacturers, is an option. For integration, though, primarily the focus has been investment firms and investment banking. When you look at a couple of other manufacturers, there are also investment backers there. When you look at this from not just a manufacturer standpoint, but Derek also used to be an integrator. You look at the financing of some of these AV companies. Where do we see this headed? Do we see the public funds? Do we see that being more and more, or both private equity as well as investment firms and investment banking?
Yeah, you're right. I get a couple different perspectives. On one hand, being a private organization definitely reduces the amount of pressure that organization has to perform.
Yeah.
But as Steve pointed out, as Charmaine pointed out, that that's a good thing and a bad thing. Sometimes you need that organizational pressure in order to be able to incentivize the kind of growth or the kind of performance that you want to have. As far as our industry goes, I expect to see more things like this. I think we've talked about this in the past shows, where I expect there to be more acquisitions and consolidations. I think it's just sort of a natural sign of the times. I think a lot of businesses are kind of structuring themselves for a lot of growth. And for a company like Kaltura, who we partner with at Extron on some technology in both products and both product offerings, I can understand exactly where they're coming from and what their strategies are. It'd be interesting to see as we go through these, as we go through some of these acquisitions or in changes in the way that these companies look at their finances, look at their structure, how that trickles down into our industry and what that means. As was already mentioned, what does that mean for the people that are actually doing the work to satisfy the customers? Because I still think there's a place in the middle there where integration is going to be required, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And that might be where the opportunity is.
Thanks so much for watching this first segment of AV Week. To check out the rest of the episode for free, click on the link below or go by the website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.